Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by Spartan Forge. On today's episode, I'm joined by Bill Vanderheyden of Iron Will Outfitters. Iron Will makes high-quality, durable broadheads, knives, and arrow components to help you make the most ethical shot possible. We are discussing hunting arrow setups, how to tune your bow for fixed broadheads, single versus double bevel broadheads, shot placement based on angle, anatomy of deer and elk, blood trailing after the shot, and more. I just wanted to let you know, as this podcast goes out, I'll be just getting ready to head to Montana. So the next 3 weeks of episodes will be rolling out as I'm gone. So it'll be all pre-recorded going out there. As far as everything on the website, so shipping orders, apparel, water bottles, all those things, they will be going out while I'm gone. They will be shipping besides a time period from basically now. So from the day this podcast comes out until September 8th to 10th, there'll be a delay in shipping. So my backup for shipping will be gone during that time frame as well. So please be patient and just understand that you will get your stuff, but it might take a little bit longer than normal, except for things that are like the t-shirts, I guess just t-shirts and the hoodie that is on the website that are shipped, basically they're drop shipped. So they're directly shipped from the manufacturer, and those are listed on there. So if you did order something with those, you might get them sooner. So just, again, please be patient. And I really appreciate all of the support and all of the orders that have come in. Got some really cool stuff coming soon. Some new deer camp styles that I'm just waiting on the hats to be done. I have the rest of the stuff in hand, just waiting for that. Once I get back from Montana, hopefully I'll have that and able to do the release of it before our deer seasons, mostly here in the East kickoff. So I appreciate that. As always, new YouTube videos going up, some short clips, kind of going through some tips, some other things going to be just finishing the editing on my Pennsylvania deer hunt from last year. It's like a vlog style video, not a film style like some of my other ones. It's just me with the camera, so not the best work on that front. But I turned into kind of a learning experience and explaining the setup and showing that and showing the process of blood trailing and all of those different things. So hopefully it'll be valuable. But that'll come out here sometime towards the end of September. Other than that, I don't think I really have any other news to share. I just think that this podcast here with Bill is very timely for the time of year. Shot angles, your arrow setups, all those different things. It's something that we need to really pay attention to and understand the anatomy to be able to make the most ethical shot possible. As you'll see, we talk about some shots in here that are, I guess, not recommended on a lot of in a lot of places that you read, and definitely not recommended for anybody new to it. But just throwing it out there and explaining how we look at shot process and how Bill looks at shot processes, and with his arrow setup, his bow setup, how he's comfortable with his shots, what he's comfortable taking, and very interesting stuff. So I hope that you get a lot of good information out of this podcast. If you like it, please give it a review, rating, wherever you listen to it at. Share it with your friends. It helps out so much. But anyways, I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. And if you are heading anywhere hunting already, as we're coming into September here, good luck to you and be safe. All right. Bill Vanderheyden, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Beau, thanks for having me on. How you been?
Good. How about yourself? It was good getting run into you a little bit there and the Colorado TAC and getting to talk to you for a few minutes. But yeah, how you been?
Yeah, good. Busy. It's a busy time of year for us, and just trying to get ready for some hunts here. Elk season's just about 2 weeks away, so looking forward to that.
I know it snuck up on me. I feel like pretty quick, as it always does. I feel like, but when I got back from the Total Archery Challenge in Montana, and I was like, it's August 1st already. I'm like, uh-oh, things are
Yeah.
coming quick. So I've been going through all my gear, getting everything dialed, ready to head to Montana. So I'm excited about that. And you were saying before we started recording here, you have both a Colorado and a Montana elk tag, correct?
Right. Yep. So I'm gonna start in Colorado. I have an elk tag and a bear tag here, and then a general tag elk in Montana. So yeah, I'm gonna be hitting elk pretty hard here in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. And so how's everything been with this time of year, like with Iron Will? So I should have started with that, but Bill's been on here before. So for a full background on Bill, you can listen to some of the other podcasts. But founder of Iron Will Outfitters, broadheads, arrow components, knives, the whole bit. Anybody that's listened to the show knows that I've been shooting the broadheads now for 4 years, and started using some of the arrow components and knives and everything for quite a while. So this, with this time of year, I'm sure people are, just getting really ramped up and trying to buy their broadheads and everything else. So it's probably a pretty busy time for you.
Yeah, August is our busiest month. A lot of guys wait till the last minute. But what's good news this year, we actually have inventory. The last 3 or 4 years, we've always sold out of a lot of product in August. But this year we worked hard, added machines and people, and tried to meet demand. So that's good news, anyways. We're not telling people we can't sell you broadheads, but it is a busy time of year. Or just our customer service, tech support. We just get hammered right now with everybody wanting help with their setup, and we're happy to do that too. We spend a lot of time just getting the right arrow set up for people and what heads they should shoot and all that. But no, it's busy, but it goes from, for me, August 1 is when I start thinking, oh man, I got to just focus on everything I need to get ready for my hunts. So it's kind of hard to do both, but good thing is we've added people and have a good team to kind of support that. Well, I'm going to take off. I'm going to take off here in a couple of days scouting, and then yeah, not get a whole lot of work done after a couple of weeks from now.
Yeah, I hear you, and it's it's crazy because I remember working at an archery shop and being like, "Oh, how does everyone wait until the last minute to you need gear and everything?" And I still find myself doing that with some things. Like I feel like my bow's usually pretty dialed, ahead of time and everything, been shooting all summer and everything. But when it comes to other gear, I was just going through my list and like, oh, I need a new ground sheet. I can't find my old one for my sleeping pad and my tent. And I'm trying to order some stuff real quick, and it definitely creates that demand at this time of year. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies in the archery industry in particular, but I think a lot of outdoor companies have been short on product the last couple of years. So if you waited till last minute, you might have to do without.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, across the industry how it is this year. I think it's probably better than it has been the last couple of years, but yeah, there's probably still stuff you can't get if you waited too long.
Yeah. What's been going on with Iron Will? Anything new recently? Or anything that you want to kind of talk about from the Iron Will standpoint before we jump into the podcast?
Oh, what's new this year? I guess new last year was our single bevel broadheads. They were really popular. We started out with just a 125 grain on up right hand single bevel last year, and that was really popular. So we expanded that single bevel line to go down to 100 grains, and then add either right or left single bevel. So you can match that if you're right fletched or left fletched. You just want to match the bevel grind so that rotation to the animal keeps going in the same direction that your arrow was rotating. So that's probably the biggest thing that's new this year is expanding single bevel line. We kind of redid our knives, our K1 ultralight hung knife, our K2 skinny knife, and the skinny knife just came out a few weeks back. So those are like about a 1 ounce knife. So ultralight, but yet can get you through an animal without having to resharpen. So I did some revisions on the design there after a lot of feedback. And I really like the latest K1 and K2. So
Hmm.
those are mainly the new things. Our components, hit inserts, collars have, gotten more and more popular. So it's been, we added a couple sizes last year, but I think we got a pretty good coverage there, and those are really busy for us too. But that's kind of the highlights of what we have going on.
Yeah, no, it's the I didn't realize that you'd redesigned the K1 ultralight. That's so it's different than the one that it was last year. Then that be correct?
We launched it like last fall. It kind of missed hunting season. It was in like October, November.
Yes. Okay. I do have the new one
Probably
then.
got you. I think we got you on
Yep.
at that time. But yeah, so it was new at that time. We added a black ceramic coating option, added a saber grind to the blade, and changed the shape a little bit. So that was kind of new late last fall. And then the K2 just came out about a month ago or so. We released that.
Okay. Yeah, I have the one with the sharp top and then the G10 handle on it and everything, and it was really nice. I used it on a whitetail last year because I had the other one that I used earlier on in one of my first whitetails, and then once I got the other knife in later, was able to use it. Really love the design, how lightweight it is, and yeah, it's super nice. And I always carry that little tiny carbide sharpener with me in the woods in case you do need something to be able to sharpen it up, and it works with my
Yeah.
broadheads too. So it's a nice little tool to be able to keep in there as well.
Great. I don't know if you have our K2 or not. Show it to you here in the video, but it's the it's I think it's 1.6 inches wide, so it's a wider knife and a big sweeping radius to it, and there's a hole through it where you can choke up, and then it's really easy to hang on to, or you can
Yeah.
also position back. But the idea with that, with this large sweeping radius, you don't cut through hide very easily at all. So it works nice to, kind of a specialty skinning knife to protect that hide and that cape from you poking holes through it and making your taxidermy do a bunch of sewing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
anyways, I like a knife like this one. I have to skin and do a nice job of skinning. It's really much harder to poke through. Anyway, that's our latest offering is that knife.
Oh, nice. So yeah, anybody that's listening to the podcast, you can see it on the video version, or you just see it on their website as well. But I like I wasn't gonna say the K1. I remember I was skinning out a coyote a couple years ago with it, and talk about how sharp it is. I like did so good at all the detail work. I got around the head and skinned everything out to get the tan hide. Then when I was at the tail, like the easiest portion, I cut the tail off by by one miscut, and so they actually just called me. It was almost, I guess it's almost been 2 years now, and they just called me and said it was done. So they must have got it fixed. So
Got
to
the
pick
tail
up.
sewed back on.
Yeah, definitely. But no, I had so I'd used for anyone listening, like I'd used the S125. That's been my broadhead of choice for the last however many years, for elk and deer. And then once the wide series came out, I had moved to that for whitetails and had used it. And then this year, when I was actually, I might have been either, I think I was, you were talking to you or Eric, was like, hey, you should try out the single bevels and see what you think of those. And so this would be my first year trying those out. But I went with a little bit different setup because I'm using your inserts now and the Snyder core system to go inside the smaller diameter vector arrows, and I have the 25 grain insert and then the collar and then the 135 grain single bevel broadhead on there, and it was shooting great. I mean, I had posted some videos the other day of shooting with my field points. I didn't have to make any adjustments. I had tuned my bow. All I did was basically paper tune it, and it was shooting right on. So I had no issues with that.
Yeah, great. I really like that Snyder core system too for micros. I mean, the alignment's great and it really reinforces it well. That's what I shot in micro diameter arrows on all my hunts the last couple of years.
Okay.
And yeah, I like that system. Did you do it as a totally glue-in system or with epoxy hits in it?
So I was planning on doing it with the epoxy hit, and then I just started hot melting them in as a glue-in system. And I like that method a lot. That's what I did with all my arrows now. I have them set up that way. It's pretty simple. Like at first I thought it was going to be difficult if I wanted to change them, how to, remove it by gluing it in, but it's not hard at all. You just heat it back up and pull them right out. I actually just did one this morning that I was swapping out, and it was not a problem whatsoever. How do you like to set yours up?
I prefer the hot melt too. I played around with epoxying some and hot melting some, and and it was actually something that Aaron Snyder had done for years with our 204 system. Is he just hot melted everything in because he wanted to get them build the arrows and hunt 10 minutes later, and not wait for epoxy. And I wasn't sure about it, but working with him on the micro design, I started trying it more and more, and I really like it too. And that's what I ended up doing a lot. And yeah, changeover, I could do it on my tailgate in the middle of a hunt on with the jet boil in like 10 minutes if I needed to. So the changeover wasn't that big a deal. And then with that Snyder core, you've got like 3 inches of the core, reinforced with steel between that 1 inch shank on the broadhead and then another, depending on which head you use, but which hit you use, but another inch and a quarter or inch and a half. So you got like 2.5 inches or 3 inches of reinforced core, and you hot melt that all in. It's just a really solid system for impact strength and everything. So that's the way I like it. So what I do with my micros is I do all hot melt. I'm currently set up with some 204 diameter like axis, just standard axis and 5 millimeter, and then I'm usually using a hit and screwing in. And I did that this year because I'm testing a lot of different vanes and broadheads currently, looking at vein stability. And then it was easier if I just wanted to like switch them out every few shots in the target kind of thing. Then I really didn't want to have the hot melt.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I'm currently set up on a couple bows with, is just our hit inserts, so I can use standard heads in 5 millimeter.
Okay. What's your preferred, like, on your arrow setup? What do you have your hit inserts? What are you gonna hunt with, like, as far as the grains and everything there?
Yeah, I'm typically have a 25 grain hit, a 125 head, and either a 10 or 25 grain collar. So I would say in general, I'm 150 to 175 up front. And I've got a 30-inch jaw shooting. I've got both set up there 70 pounds or 75, and it's hard for me to get much more weight up front than that, even in a 250 spine. But the ones I currently have, two bows set up, one's at 75, one's at 70, because I'm testing some arrows too. And so I've got like one set up for a 260 spine, and there I have the 25 hit. And I either go, so I'm also testing a 100 grain head versus a 125. I really got too much going on right before season here, but I can put on a 10 grain collar and the 125 head and have 160 up front, or I can put on the 25 grain collar, and I just leave the collars loose because they're just like slip fit, and they're about a thousandth of an inch slip fit on the axis. So I can put on a 25 grain collar and the 100 grain head and have 150 up front. And that 10 grain doesn't, to me, I hit the same out to 100 yards with a 10 grain total arrow weight difference. I know people get hung up on like a grain or two, but it takes more than that. I mean, maybe there's an inch difference at 100 yards, but really not enough to worry about. So currently those are my kind of two setups I'm working with. I'm typically, and I probably will stick with it, go with a 125 head, 25 grain hit, 10 grain collar, 160 up front. And depending if I'm then 300 spine, it's about 505 grains. It's about 525. If I add lighted nocks, you can add 15 grains to either one of those. But that's basically my hunting setup there.
Gotcha. Yeah, mine's coming in at, so I have a short draw length of 27.5. So mine are shorter than yours, but I'm coming at like 480 grains with the lighted nocks on the back. Do you notice with the weight on the back, does that affect your trajectory at all? Like, I felt like in the past, whenever I'd put lighted nocks on, my arrows would shoot low, but anymore, I don't have no difference with it. I have arrows in my quiver right now with both on it, and they're both shooting in the same exact spot.
Yeah, I would say that lighted nocks, I mean, they're not all created equal, and I don't want to bash any in particular, but
Yeah.
when there's holes through them and plungers and things like that, there's just things about them that make them, there's a lot of force that drives through that string into that arrow through the nock. And if there's, if that changes the force versus just a nock that's solid, if it changes, if you push it on one side or another, things like that, it can make them not hit as well. And I can tell you, I've struggled in the past getting good groups at long range with lighted nocks. So, I mean, that could be part of it, is like just the geometry and the structure of that nock could push your arrow a little different. Another thing could be is if you're kind of borderline on the spine, like if you're kind of borderline underspined, small changes in weight, front or back can make you hit a little differently.
Okay.
Whereas I found if you're like optimally spined or a little stiff on the spine and your bow is really well tuned, small changes in weights that might affect the dynamic spine have minimal effect. Anyway, that's been my experience.
Gotcha. What you don't have to say which ones you don't like, but which lighted nocks do you like?
None of them.
None of them. Okay.
I mean, to be honest, I don't. There's something I kind of don't like about anyone. The ones I'd say I kind of like the best are fire nock, because it's a solid nock, and there's no. So the geometry of the nock is solid between like your string and your arrow, and it's a fairly short throat. It works off acceleration. So there's kind of a acceleration sensor in there. There's a circuit board and a battery and things inside. So that's what I like about them. I could shoot well at long range with them. They don't screw up. I think the force going from your string to your arrow. So that's the good news. The bad news is that I've struggled a bit with reliability. They're a bit tricky to like glue all into your arrow. You have to glue the stop and assemble the little circuit board, and things can go wrong. So yeah, I would say there's not a nock out there that I love, but I do, after shooting with lighted nocks for a couple of years, I do like knowing exactly where I hit, and it seems like I do with a lighted nock. You just can see that entry point. So I'm a little on the fence with them because of the issues I've had with them, but they are nice for. And I do a lot of testing in low light situations, hunting hogs, and then you kind of got to have them if you want to find your arrow again. So that's part of the reason I've used them more often recently is because when I've been when I test a lot of single bevels, or if I'm testing off season, I can always go down and shoot a big boar in Texas and see how they perform.
That makes sense. I haven't used them in a long time actually, and mostly because a lot of the western states don't allow them, and they're starting to now, but not all of them did, and I just didn't want to change my setup, and I just had it done and I didn't want to think about it anymore. But this year Montana allows it, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna use them again and go with that, because I do like, especially when I have Justin there filming, it's easy to see on a camera for sure with a lighted nock versus not having one, and that helps with the recovery aspect. So that's one of the reasons why I switched back to using them again. But no, I've been playing around with different arrows and stuff this year. I think I know now for elk I'm going to use those vectors with the hit system. I've had a couple other ones that I've been playing around with. The Nexus arrows I shot last year, those were a good arrow. And then also for whitetails, I might try out I am trying out the Exodus MMT arrow, which is an interesting one. It's just more of like kind of a standard diameter, but it shoots faster. Maybe I'm not using the right terminology, but I don't have the pin gap that I do with the same weight as I do with other arrows. And from a whitetail standpoint, and just using a couple pins, it definitely helps at some of those closer ranges. I can basically use that one pin and not have to worry about it as much. So I'm playing around with a bunch of different ones. I have a couple bows set up, and just playing around with it. It's kind of fun and also frustrating at times. Switching gear.
Yeah, definitely. And part of the reason I've been playing around so much is I've been doing. I feel like one thing that keeps some people from shooting fixed heads and having better, I think, a more reliable head on there is their issues with shooting fixed heads. And a lot of it's, either the bow's tuned or their arrow's not really set up well for it doesn't really stabilize well with a fixed head. So been testing that a lot, trying to get just more data to share with people and help people be more successful shooting our heads at whatever range they want to shoot at and having good accuracy. 100% know it can be done. And I just think there's a little bit of education there for some people that are just used to shooting. If you're shooting mechanical because you can't get a fixed head to shoot well for you, that can totally be solved with just a little bit of effort. If you know the right things to do, I guess.
Yeah, when you I don't want to dive super deep into this as we did in the last time that we talked, but when you're have your bow set up and you have it tuned, and if you go out and you shoot, your field points and then your broadheads and they are off a little bit, what's your process to fixing that and getting them to line up?
Yeah, it generally means your arrow's not coming straight off your bow. Or you could be underspined, or you could have a vein that you could have an arrow that's not very stable because your veins are too small. So it's really kind of those three things I think to look at. And one, I'll just say for veins, I like a fairly high profile vein. I think that does the best job of stabilizing broadheads, like 0.5 inch or taller. That would be like a Blazer, a Max Hunter, Q2i Fusion 2, DCA's veins. All four of those are about that high. Max Stealth is about 0.5, so something that high or higher, I think works well. And I like 2 to 3 degrees, 2.5, 3 degrees offset or helical to get rotating. So that's kind of the vein thing. If you're shooting a little target vein, you're going to have trouble. It's just not going to stabilize the broadhead in the front very well. Spine, you can figure that out. Use Pinwheel, Archer's Advantage software. Look at charts. Figure out if you're spined properly. Nominal to a little stiff, I think, is good for fixed heads. The best way to check, is your bow really tuned? Because a lot of guys will say, well, my pro shop, shot through paper when they set it up and they told me it was tuned, last year. And things just go out of tune.
Yeah.
One great way to test is take a bare shaft. If you got a fletching dinged up on one of your arrows, just cut the fletchings off and leave a little base of it to keep some weight. This is typically what I do. Cut the veins off so you got no vein height really off of that little foot. Or you can take a bare shaft, put a couple wraps on it. I just like to get the weight pretty close. But shoot a bare shaft with a field point and then a fletch shaft with a field point. Shoot the two at, say, 20 yards and 30 yards. And I just did this last night. I put on new strings on my backup bow, got it tuned in, been shooting it for about a week, and then I just rechecked the tune. I shot 2 shafts at 30 yards, and they were hitting like ½ inch apart, and the shafts were parallel. And that's what you should see. And I also took that bow out of tune just to test some broadhead stability or vein stability with broadheads. And then with that out of tune, getting like a 1/4 inch right tear, then I'll get that bare shaft to hit almost a foot left of the fletch shaft at 40 yards. So to me, that's a great check. If your arrow's coming straight out of your bow, a bare shaft and a fletch shaft should hit the same point at, say, 20, 30 yards, 20, 30, 40 really. But At least check it at 20, and then I like to check it at 30. It's a little bit more of a better indicator. Don't just do it once either, because poor form or whatever will also throw that out. But
Yeah.
if they're hitting this, if they're hitting say within an inch or two of each other, and the shafts are kind of parallel, and you're saying, okay, that bear shaft is going straight, then you know your bow's tuned, your arrow's coming straight off your bow. If that arrow's coming off and say it's way tail right, that fletch shaft's going to hit left at the field point. If the arrow comes off tail right, your fletchings will just straighten it back out, and it'll make it go pretty straight. So anyway, that's the
Interesting.
check. You know, those three things, if those three things are good, your fixed edge should hit well. Like I took the bow out of tune, shot it 40 yards versus field points, and I couldn't really get much of a difference at all with our S or SB series. Then I went to our wide solid, which is the biggest surface area we have, and then I could get a significant difference between a field point and that broadhead at 40. So, anyways, the bigger the broadhead, the less forgiving it is if your bow's out of tune, or you just have bad form, like you're torquing your bow hard. You know, it can also be an issue. But that bear shaft versus a fletch shaft will show you if your bow's in tune and if your form's consistent. Because if you can't do the same thing over and over there, then your form's not consistent, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I've been lucky the last couple of years that my bows have just been good when I thought I had them in tune when I set them up in the basement and went out, and they've been good, and I haven't had to make any adjustments or move anything for it. So that's been it's been positive. But I mean, I've been shooting those fixed heads for a while and haven't had any issue with them flying. That's for sure. So I don't know. I'm excited to get to use the single bevel. And I was gonna wait till later to ask you this, but now that we're on this topic a little bit, what is the advantage of a single bevel, and when should someone consider that versus a double bevel?
Yeah, I think performance is great from each. I get that question a ton.
Yeah.
And really there's some kind of minor trade-offs. To me, what's more important is kind of sharpness, edge retention, durability, having high-end materials and very sharp blades that stay sharp and can be durable and make it through bones, things like that. To me, that's all more important than which type of bevel is ground on the edge of it. But let's say you had all that already, and then just which one do you want? I think they both penetrate really great. I would say inherently a double bevel has a little better combination of say sharpness, edge retention, and durability when it's going through something hard like heavy bone, just because the pressures on both sides of that bevel at once is it's just driving through. Whereas on a single bevel, all the pressure's on one side of that edge, and it's just more likely to want to bend it over or chip it out. And I had to play around with that angle and get that. We use like a 32-degree angle, and at that angle, I got the edges strong enough to go through bone without damage. But really at 25, which is kind of more common in the industry, I just didn't have the strength I wanted. I was getting a little bit of edge damage on really heavy bone. So anyway, I would say, and then also if you're hitting rocks in the dirt and stuff like that, I feel like, well, I mean, that's hard on any edge, but
Yeah.
I think double bevel may have a slight advantage there, but rocks and hitting steel and things like that, you can kind of count on you're going to get some edge damage. So that's kind of the advantage of double bevel. Penetration's great. It's just going to slice straight through, and I don't think you can necessarily beat it for max penetration. The single bevel, the cool things there, that side pressure, that pressure on one bevel, and you get pressure on one side of the top and the other side of the bottom, and it creates this rotation through the animal. And it really, instead of having these straight slices through, you get like these rotating cuts, and it opens up the holes pretty good. I like it with the bleeder in there too, a single bevel with our single bevel bleeder in that rotation. You get almost a square hole through the hide, and as you look at the tissue, there's more trauma to it. It's kind of spinning it up as it's cutting it, and so Wound channels are nice, a lot of bleeding, a little bit more open holes, entrance, exit, more blood on the ground, potentially. So, and I originally thought they wouldn't penetrate quite as well as double bevel because of that rotation, but what I've seen in testing is that they penetrate really well, and I feel it's because you got that rotational momentum of that arrow already, kind of providing some of that torque as it rotates through. I haven't really seen a reduction in penetration, I guess, over double bevels. They're both doing great, penetrating through bone great. So it's it's more of a personal opinion. Which of those sounds better to you, and go with it. I
Yeah.
think they both perform really well.
Gotcha. So okay, so to kind of transition a little bit here, I wanted to talk to you about shot placement, and as basically with the different types of heads and kind of how you look at shot placement with animals. So like if you have an elk or and this may vary between animals, elk or deer, but if you have the perfect shot, broadside shot, where's your like aiming point on that? Do you stay tight to the shoulder? Do you back off a little bit, or how does that look like for you?
I mean, personally, I stay tight to the shoulder. I try to hit the top of the heart, lungs. If I'm shooting deer that are known to be super jumpy, I might even aim like low heart. And depending if I'm in like Alabama or Texas, but I'm generally just in general on an animal, whether it's a deer, white-tailed deer, mule deer, elk, caribou, whatever, I'm pretty tight to that shoulder up into that vital B, kind of where the top of the heart lung area would be. And there's a couple reasons. One is that's where they're going to die fast. I mean, they're going to be like dead. I want to be dead in 5 seconds and drop in sight. And I think that can happen with that shot. And I think it doesn't happen when you hit the back of the lungs, even if you get a double lung, but you hit in the back edges, those lobes that are further back. Well, for one, you can miss the opposite. You might only catch one, and then it can be a longer, slower death, or yeah, depending if you get liver and guts or whatever. But even the back lobes of the lungs, um, I've seen animals keep breathing for minutes with those, and I'm trying to figure that out. My brother's a doctor. I've got another doctor in town. I've tried to understand that, but you could basically cut off some of the lobes of the lungs, and they could potentially live, right? And a person can live with a lobe removed from his lungs. So I think it seems like if you hit those back lobes, higher back, sometimes it definitely just takes longer for the animal to die. I think eventually you get air in there and the lungs collapse, but anyway, it could be more like a minute instead of 5 seconds. So
Yeah.
personally, I like to shoot for the quickest kill possible, be dead in sight, have as ethical a quickest kill as you can. But we can talk into this more later. But you need a broadhead that if you do hit a little bit of bone there, you won't have a problem with it.
Yep, and that's exactly what I was thinking. And that's why, I mean, that's kind of where my shot placement is when I'm shooting at an animal. I stay tight to the shoulder for the most part, because I don't want to end up hitting too far back if there is a little bit of margin of error, and then all of a sudden you have a lot longer of a track job. The animal has to suffer for a longer period of time, all of those different things. And I feel confident that if I do, hit that blade or anything, not the main shoulder bone, but the blade, that my setup is going to do okay in that situation.
Yeah, it bugs me whenever I hear it a fair amount on TV shows and by kind of um, influencers out there, I guess, that they shoot mechanicals and just aim back off the shoulder. And yeah, I just think it's not as lethal of a shot. It's a slower death. So I don't like that, and I know why they do it. They've had bad experiences hitting shoulders, hitting just scapula, and not getting through, and that's pushed them to shoot further and further back. But I don't like that personally. I don't like it when that's recommended. I just feel like hitting further back is just a slower death, and you can, especially on a deer-sized animal. A lot of the whitetail shots are tree stand elevated shots. Man, you can totally get through scapula with the right broadhead. So that really shouldn't be I mean, it's up to the person and their setup and what they want to do. And if you're satisfied with broadside shots only, aiming a little back or quartering away shots, um, and you want to shoot a mechanical or a head that's not going to penetrate that well, a lot of people get that to work for them, and that's what they want to do. Personally, I really like shooting in a spot where it's going to die quickly and going through bone if you need to.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point. The angle, even if it's broadhead, if you're in a tree stand or even if you're out west and you're shooting down or shooting up, that's gonna it's gonna cause your arrow to enter in different places. You can't just aim at the exact same spot. Do you have like a visualization, like if you're looking, say you have an elk down below you at I don't know exactly what angle, but are you like visualizing where your arrow is going to come out? Like how are you looking at that to know where to put your pin at?
Yeah, I'm thinking about, and this has changed over time. There was a time when I just hunted many years ago, just hunted whitetails and only took like broadside or quartering away shots. And anything like quartering two or frontal was just like off the board. I wasn't even thinking about it. But the more and more that I've shot through bones and testing and shot a lot of animals at frontals, quartering two, broadside, quartering away, straight down, and had these experiences to know what can work and what is not going to work. I'm really kind of envisioning, okay, where's the heart and the two lungs, no matter what angle they're at, and if it's a frontal or slight quartering or hard quartering two, slight quartering two, quartering away. I'm always kind of thinking about where are the bones, where are the heart and lungs, and I'm pretty much going to aim for the top of the heart lung area from any angle if there's nothing too solid in the way, basically.
What do you consider as too solid? Like, is there a certain part of the leg bone that will interfere with that, or what do you consider as too solid for an arrow setup like you have in broadhead setup?
Yeah, and this would depend a bit on the animal we're
Yeah.
talking about. On deer-sized game, personally, all I would kind of avoid is like a straight knuckle shot. But I'm really not going to have that shot anyways. The last two mule deer I shot, for instance, were quartering two shots, and I was the way I've been getting some mule deer lately is put some decoys out and getting into a tree stand, putting up a quick tree stand, and so they were like came into the decoy, quartering on, and they stopped. And they're like, something's up, and I knew I was going to either have that shot or not. And I'm shooting tight into the V, but I'm also slightly elevated. So if I hit a little forward, it's scapula. It's somewhere on that shoulder bone. Or it's going to slip right into the V just behind the shoulder bone. But I'm shooting in a place where it's going to be a double lung. And one of those two shots, I didn't hit any bone. It just slipped right in that V and went through both lungs, and he died quickly. And the other one, I went right through that shoulder bone. Went through the shoulder bone, exited back by the opposite side hind leg, stuck in the ground. So I know on a deer-sized game with an iron will broadhead in the front, and I'm sure the heads could work for this too. But the way I describe that is very very durable kind of premium steel that's hard enough and tough enough that it can go through bone without really bending or breaking. And anyway, I know that broadhead's going to win against bone, every time. It's going to cut through the bone. And penetration is not really going to be an issue on a deer-sized animal with the shoulder bone. Anyways, they're going right through the bone and also very quick kill. And on whitetail as well, like my brother last year had a slight quartering on downward shot on a whitetail buck. He went through the near side scapula and cut the offside femur bone in two and then stuck it in the ground. We walked up on his buck, and the leg bone was sticking out like a compound fracture, just cut clean. And I also cut through the femur bone on my whitetail, but it was on the exit. I didn't shoot into the femur on purpose, but it cut it on the exit hole and stuck in the ground. So anyway, deer-sized animals with the right, I'm shooting about a 500 grain arrow, a very sharp, durable cut on contact head. I know a deer-sized animal, it's going to go through the scapula. So I'm comfortable with um, a frontal or quartering to, or quartering away, or straight down through the spine with that. I'm not going to try and shoot like, through a hip socket. There's some things that are just kind of unreasonable, but the shoulder bone, really, if you look at it, um, anywhere up, I'm not going to aim right at the knuckle either. Although I know I can cut through them in my testing of just shooting through those bones. But if you're up from the knuckle, that bone isn't really that thick. In fact, at the upper part of it, which is what you're going to hit a lot of times on a downward tree stand shot, it's pretty thin. It's thinner than the rib.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the issue is a lot of three blades that where, say, aluminum ferrule or even thin blades, things are going to bend and break on bone contact, suck up a lot of energy, and can keep you from passing through. And then, of course, mechanicals are not likely to get through because they're going to bend and things will flex and they'll suck up a lot of energy as well. They might get through, but a lot of times they won't.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And, and that's like the quartering two shot is like probably one of the hardest shots if you think about it from that aspect of where the vitals are. And like what I try to do before every season, I like pull up the anatomy of elk and deer at different angles and kind of see, and you'll be surprised, and even if you don't look at it very much, of where you think things are and where they're supposed to be at, and visualizing that. I screwed up a shot on my third whitetail that I shot last year. I was on the ground in West Virginia, and this came down to a couple different things. One, it's on video. So the buck came in and he hit a scrape, and I called him in on the ground, and I thought he was straight quartering or straight on with me basically with a slight quartering too. But when he went up and hit the scrape on his hind legs, he came down and he was angled harder than I expected. And I was looking through my peep sight, and two things happened. So I couldn't see that he changed a little bit, and then also I had the yardage wrong because I had ranged the tree, and he was actually where that branch went further back than it was, and it put him at like 38 yards versus 33, and I ended up cutting low across his leg and brisket, and the deer ended up living based off of that. But I was super confident in that shot if I would have had the yardage down right, and being able to be able to hit that, because I was visualizing where those vitals were, where the bones were, and especially off the ground, I feel like you have a bigger window of opportunity versus when you do from like an elevated position. I don't know how many whitetails my dad has killed frontal or quartering to off the ground over the years, and it's can be a really lethal shot if you're confident in your shooting there and your setup.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the window is just a bit smaller for what you can hit. I think on an elk it's fairly big. On a deer it gets smaller. I shot an audad on a frontal shot, and it depends if it's perfectly frontal or just slightly quartering to at an angle. If it's slightly quartering to, you really want to not shoot that hollow the base of the neck, but a little bit split that and the shoulder blade, so you catch them both long. So if you're taking those frontal or very slight quartering to, and then there's some angle probably that it's not that great of a shot, because if you go inside the shoulder, you're going to maybe only hit one lung. And if you go outside the shoulder at that steep angle on the scapula, depending on which head you're shooting, it might not penetrate it that well. Or you might, if it does, you might still be hitting one lung going back. So you really kind of got to have the anatomy clear in your head, and be confident that your shot's going to hit, both lungs or the heart when you take those frontal or very slight quartering to. And, we're going to get bashed for even saying to take these shots, because I think a lot of people just feel like they're not an ethical shot with a bow. But I feel like if you understand anatomy, and you have the right setup, and you kind of understand what what bones you can get through at what angles. I totally feel like it can be done and done
Yeah.
successfully.
I was gonna put a disclaimer on this too. Is like basically you have to know your setup very well and understand your confidence in your shooting. This isn't first time bow hunting. Probably not your best opportunity for a shot. But I mean the amount of testing that you do and you go through it and understand it. Like you're very confident and it is a very ethical shot when you are confident in that and confident in your setup versus just kind of winging it from that perspective. Because I mean there's a lot that can go wrong with those quartering shots with only hitting one lung. And if you're too far back, like if you're behind the shoulder when they're quartering two, there's a good chance you only catch one lung and maybe liver or guts or whatever, and it is a little bit different. So I
Yeah,
think that's a good point.
we should probably emphasize that is that this is kind of the master's class on anatomy and shot placement because
Yeah.
I mean personally I try and be a more successful bow hunter every year. A lot of the work I do, a lot of my decisions are based on, is this going to make me a more successful bow hunter? And then I work on those things. And so I'm trying to make the most of any opportunity I can get. And that's made me, practice longer distance, extended my range, made me understand anatomy better, made, understand animal behavior, which animals are likely to move, which are not. Um, so there's a lot to that. And I would say for beginners, if you're kind of new into bow hunting, just stick with a broadside quartering away shot. Don't try the quartering on until you're more familiar, I guess, or put the time into, learning anatomy, where the organs are at, where the bones are at. And can you make because the shot windows are tighter too. And can you make that tight, accurate shot, under pressure in that moment when adrenaline's high and all those other things are going on?
Yeah, no, you're spot on, and like, and same thing with like, for me personally, this is my thing, but like if I have a frontal shot, I have a lot more of a limited yardage that I will take that shot versus broadside quartering away shot based on how I feel about my capabilities of hitting a smaller spot, under pressure and everything. And just because, you shoot a target well at 60 yards all the time doesn't mean that that's your maximum effective range. For that, because there's a lot of other external factors, including the adrenaline and everything else that kind of kicks in at that point that can make things an animal behavior, how alert they are, things like that can definitely affect that.
Yeah, for sure. If and yeah, there's also this assessment of, is this animal going to move when you're taking the shot? Like I'll pass up broadside shots if the animal's like alert and looking at me. I'm gonna I know that animal's gonna move, and especially if it's a longer shot. That animal's if you can't take a 50-yard shot or probably even a 40-yard shot at an animal that's on high alert looking at you. At least not a whitetail or one of the species that are likely to move on you. They're going to be gone by the time your arrow gets there. So that's part of the assessment as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And it depends on where you're at, even within like whitetails. Certain states are a lot cagier. I've seen videos of them dropping at 20 yards or spinning or doing whatever. And I just watched a video of someone trying to shoot a pronghorn the other day, and same thing. It was like a 40-yard shot. They were looking at the antelope was looking at them, and by the time that arrow was on its way there, that thing had spun all the way around. It was crazy.
Yeah, and that's what with the whole whitetail world. At one time, I think a lot of people said we had kind of an elk specialty broadhead, and it was overkill for whitetails, and I didn't really disagree. But at the same time, I hunt a lot of whitetails too. I'm going to hunt whitetails in 4 states this year, and I actually need our broadhead more often in whitetails than elk because they move so frequently. They duck and spin into it, and even if and I get that question a lot. Well, why would I shoot? Or I'll tell people, shoot our wide head instead of a mechanical. It's going to give you a 2 1/8 inch total cut. but yet it's going to go through scapula if you hit one. And they're like, well, I wouldn't aim at it, I aim back. Well, there's really two things that can happen. You can purposely take a shot where you might hit it, open up your different shot angles. The other thing is, well, the animal can just move and make you hit it when you didn't want to. It can duck and turn into it. And that's happened to me pretty frequently in recent years, where, especially when I've hunted in states like Alabama and Texas, where, man, those deer are keyed up. They get hunted 5 months out of the year, and they're often hunted over corn feeders, and they're used to being hunted, and they are on high alert. And even if you're not hunting over a feeder, just taking that shot, they're moving. So yeah, if they're ducking, turning, and giving me that shoulder blade, yeah, that's happened to me a few times recently, just because they move.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point, is the movement aspect of them. And so one thing, as far as like from a beginner level, explain even like with like the quartering away shot, kind of how your thought process is of, all right, where you're going to aim based off that. Because when an animal's turned, you don't just aim behind the shoulder no matter what. And just kind of explain how you look at that shot.
Yeah, you got to kind of picture in 3D where the organs are, I guess. If it's quartering away, you're aiming further back, more towards the opposite, look more like at the opposite leg, where that would be, or just in front of the opposite leg. What I try to do is picture, like, where's the top of the heart lung area, and if you cut like the top of the heart, you can hit both lungs on the way through there. And that's kind of what I try and picture, whether it's in broadside or quartering away, and it's just going to swing my aim point back a little bit on the animal the more they quarter away, and to the point where, if they're, I mean, I don't shoot when they're straight away, although a buddy of mine did on an elk last year, right below the tail, and actually came out, the brisket. I would not recommend that. There's a lot of, you can hit bone socket, whatever, but it can be a steep quartering away, where I've done this on an elk, actually sliced the meat of the hind quarter, and then and in that case, it came out on the opposite side, just in front of the brisket. So it actually went through the top of the heart, but it was, full length on that elk to get there. And then it was I was basically aiming at the hind quarter, but I was looking at, where's the heart going to be? Where do I want it to exit that animal?
Gotcha. And with okay, so like now flipping it a little bit, and you're looking at like a frontal shot, and if someone were to take that shot, how, like for me, when I look, it depends on the animal of how big it is, but like, say like a whitetail, you have a little bit, probably like a softball size spot, maybe even a little bit smaller. There's like a gap inside the cavity there. Is that, how are you looking at the frontal shots, I guess?
Yeah, at the base of the neck, and there's a little kind of hollow spot there. And on a bull elk, say it's where it goes from that dark neck hair to the light, right at that base of that is a good aiming point on an elk. As you go down from that, you'll start seeing the brisket bone protruding. Like, if you look at the very bottom of the animal coming up, you see that brisket bone, and then it'll kind of stop, and then it'll just be kind of a hollow there, and the ribs from the brisket they'll go up around, and they'll be just inside of the shoulders, and the ribs. Anyways, at the very front, there's this area between the shoulders where there's still some ribs, and then inside of that, there's nothing but a softball size hole. At least in an elk is probably a softball. The deer is probably a little bit smaller than that, but I mean, if it's straight frontal, that's what I'm aiming for. Trying to just slip it in, not even hit a rib, just go through that, cut through and then you're kind of going right at the top of the heart lung area there. If there's a very slight quartering one way or the other, and I'm talking very slight here, and this is how I shot my broadhead a few years ago. I just aimed a little bit to the side of that, so I hit a little bit. I hit inside the shoulder blade yet, but I cut through a rib or two, and then it caught both lungs instead of one, and the top of the heart that way. Anyway, that's kind of how I'm looking at that shot. If it's a little bit quartering, I wouldn't shoot necessarily straight for that hollow, because then you might only hit the one lung and not two.
So at that point, are you hugging tighter to the shoulder then? If it's quartering to a little more?
I am, yeah, on the shoulder. Let's say if it's quartering two, the shoulder that's going to be closer to me, a little bit closer to me, I'm
Hmm.
hugging. And now again, these are small angles. This isn't a 45. This is
Yeah.
like this angle is like 10 degrees or something like that. I'm I'm hanging a little bit more tighter to that shoulder, but yet inside that shoulder. And I'm envisioning, okay, I want this to pass through both lungs. Do I need to aim a little bit to the right to hit the near side lung and the far side lung in that case?
No, that totally makes sense. And how does that change with that frontal shot at an angle? Like I've done it before, and I won't do it again, at least from my perspective of shooting down at, because that hole seems to be a lot smaller. What are your thoughts on that? Maybe you'll be able to change my thoughts on it.
Yeah, the straight frontal shots I've taken have been from the ground,
Hmm.
on animals, and a straight frontal from a tree stand. I mean, you might, you might be hitting them right in the head, right?
Yeah.
If especially if they drop. I don't know that a straight frontal. I guess it would depend on what angle you're at. But I don't think a steep downward angle of frontals is great if it just feels like the head's kind of in the way. I guess you'd have to lay out the shot exactly in the photo, and we have to talk through, does that make
Yeah.
sense or not? Yeah, I think the frontal's more of a ground shot to me, a straight frontal. You can have I know a lot of guys, I personally haven't had this shot, but I know like Snyder says he's taken a lot where there's a slight quartering two steep downward where he splits like the neck and the shoulder and goes into the vitals, and kills a lot of deer that way. For me, it's been more of it's out the deer's out there a bit more, and these have been on recent two mule deer is what I'm thinking of, where it's not a steep downward, but it's kind of an angled downward, and it's more
Hmm.
of a 45, and I can kind of, and the shoulder's more almost flat to me, and I can try and thread it in right in that tight V under that shoulder blade, the scapula there. But if I hit the scapula, it's going to go through it anyways, and what's behind it is the two lungs. So those are the shots that, as far as from an elevated stand in that frontal or quartering two, I've done it when it's more like a quartering two, where I know it's scapula there. If it's like a straight frontal downward steep, um, I don't know, you might actually end up going in front of the heart if it's too steep. I don't know. I don't necessarily think that's a great shot
Yeah.
from an elevated stand.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And so, okay, now thinking about, you make a shot. Typically, like what do you think, as far as like after you make the shot and you have a pretty good idea of where you hit, how long do you wait? Like, okay, so based on, like, say, you think you hit double lung and heart, you normally see them go down in sight or hear them go down, and then kind of progressing towards the worst side of it. How do you look at that?
Yeah, if all goes well, if all goes to plan, you die in sight.
Yeah.
And especially in open country and out west, that's typically what happened if it went right. And sometimes the country's, cover so thick, he could have gone 20 yards, you can't see him. So I mean that doesn't always work out. But um, yeah, if you think about like my bear I shot a couple months ago, I shot, it looked like a good spot. Um, I actually freaked out on this one because the arrow didn't go through, and I couldn't figure out what happened. I saw my lighted nock on my near side of the bear, but I actually pinned him. I actually shot in. I buried that arrow into a tree, and that's what stopped the shot. Anyway, but the bear ran off. It ran off fast, disappeared into some thick cover. I'm typically, if I don't see the animal go down, I'm typically waiting like, um, 30, 45 minutes just to go down and look at my arrow and assess kind of what might have happened. And it's better with lighted nock, but a lot of times you don't really, you can't always trust what you thought happened or where you thought you hit it. Um, Especially if that animal spins on you. It can be kind of questionable. And a lot of times when your critical thinking can sometimes be poor in times of high adrenaline. What
Yeah.
you thought happened, when you tell the story of what you thought happened, it can be off from what really did happen, right? Um, yeah, but typically I'm waiting 30, 45 minutes. It depends on the cover and how close I think the animal might be. Um, yeah, I might even wait longer or just back out. But if I think I can safely get to where my arrow would have hit and assess the situation without bumping or pushing the animal, I'll do that. And then I'm looking at the arrow or the blood on the arrow, assessing, did I hit, what did I hit at that point? Heart, lungs, liver, guts, and then I'm making a decision based on that.
Yeah. And what do you have a certain amount of time if you like, okay, you look at the arrow and you're like, all right, there's some dark blood on there. It looks like maybe I hit the liver. Does that determine like how many hours that you wait for it, like before you track from that standpoint?
It would, and conditions can change on this a bit. Like, what's the animal? What's he likely to do? How long do they take to die? Do I care? Is it a pig? Do I care? I mean, not that pigs, should be less valued, I guess. But be honest, when I'm on pig patrol, this ranch lets us on to just shoot as many pigs as we can with our bows, and we can't wait till next day because we can't even get on there next day. So we're pushing that right away. Trying to put another shot if we need to. So all that would kind of go into there. Let's say it's just like a giant whitetail buck that I am totally excited about, that I want to like the best chance of getting this animal. Yeah, then I'm waiting based on what I see, and if it looks like good heart lung, I still might wait a little bit, but an hour is going to be it should actually be dead in a minute or something. So I'm probably going to go pretty quickly there. I'll look and see how much blood am I seeing right from the shot. If it all looks good, bright red blood, heart, lung, arteries around, main arteries, things like that. I'm on it pretty quick then. That's best case. It might be in 30 minutes. If I didn't see it go down, I might still be on it then in 30, 45 minutes. If it's darker blood, real dark blood like that liver blood, or even some of the gut intestinal blood can be that really dark,
Mm-hmm.
black, almost black. Then I'm typically waiting. If I think it's liver, I might go 6 hours or something like that. If it's an antelope, I'm probably less. What I found is I can gut shoot an antelope and that thing is dead in like an hour and a half. I think they're weaker animals. And, and I mean, I saw that. I hit an animal back and it went and bedded down. And I was trying to figure out how to get in for a stalk, circled around on it. And then the thing died. And that was that was only 1 hour on a straight gut shot. It just bolted forward at my shot and I hit it back. Just trying to get in there and kill it as quick as I could, and it was dead in an hour. Whereas some animals will be 8 to 12 hours for just a straight, all you hit is intestines, I've seen. So anyway, yeah, the liver, I'm probably waiting like 4 to 6, and gut shot maybe even 8 to 12, leave them overnight, something like that.
Yeah, and weather, all that stuff kind of always plays a role in it. One thing that I learned last year from the buck my dad shot, he was unsure where the arrow went. Mostly, as you get the adrenaline flowing, you start second guessing yourself. And even though it felt good, he's like, I don't know, this is what happened. And he waited, I don't know, a little over an hour to get down and look at his arrow, and it had dark red blood on it. Well, what it ended up being was the blood had actually dried, and it dried darker than it was at the beginning. And so we thought liver and waited 6 hours and then went in, and then we started finding it was double lung. I mean, the deer was dead in 60 yards. It went out of sight, and it didn't make a loud crash, and it was, it was dead. But sometimes it can throw you off a little bit, depending on
Yeah.
how that goes. I mean, it's just there. I feel like the whole blood trailing aspect is always such a difficult thing to be able to judge, especially when you don't know exactly where you hit and how to go with that. But I'm with you on unless I see it fall in sight, I usually wait in the stand 45 to 60 minutes before I'll get out, like when I'm deer hunting, just before And I can't really speak on the elk side because the only bull that I shot, I watched him fall over, so that was a little bit of a different story. But that's just kind of, I've always tried to be a little bit more patient with it and make sure.
Yeah, and weather conditions will depend too. Like I've been fooled a couple of times because maybe it's a steep quartering away, or a slight quartering too, where I'll catch some intestines or stomach, even though it was a double lung shot. It's just that that's where it exited because it was a slight quartering too, but I actually did get both lungs, and it's dead right over this hill right here. And then if the weather conditions, if it's warm, I don't really want to wait 8 hours, especially if I shot it in the morning. So sometimes that enters into it too. Like, does this make sense from the shot I think I made? And then if the conditions, I might push it a little more than I would if I'm concerned about the meat and meat spoilage, depending on the weather conditions.
Yeah, no, 100%, and even rain and things that could, wash away the blood and everything comes to the effect when I'm thinking about it there for sure.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to talk to you about more kind of goes back to your broadheads, but the argument with the fixed versus the mechanical side standpoint with blood trailing, why are your heads, like, why do you think that they still, or not, why do you think, why do they still, leave a good blood trail? How does a fixed head leave a good blood trail that compares to a mechanical? Is it come down to the design of it, or how do you kind of explain a little bit with a single bevel kind of spinning in there and cutting and making that square hole, but elaborate on that a little bit if you would.
Yeah, it's always going to be the size of the head. Um, and I say that, the size of the head and the sharpness edge retention are going to kind of be key to how much blood you're going to get. And that's, I didn't realize that when I started broadhead development, what has it been, 15 years ago now, something like that. But how much sharpness and edge retention matters. And a lot of the cheaper blades you buy, by the time they're through the hide, they're not really sharp anymore. And by the time they go through a rib, for sure they're not. And they push a lot of tissue aside. And so you can't just go by size. If you're like 1.25 inch, 3 blade would be like around 1.8 inch just total cut. And people will think about that like, okay, based on this size, I'll get a certain hole and a certain amount of bleeding. Well, it'll vary a lot depending on if the blades are sharp and slicing all the way through or not, or if they're pushing tissue apart. So one main thing you can do to get the most blood on the ground and the quickest kill, the animal's going to die. And if the lungs don't collapse, you're cutting arteries, it's going to bleed out. And, the blood loss is what you need to get a good blood trail. So sharpness, edge retention is key. So even our heads that are fairly compact, at least they are slicing all the way through and giving you kind of the best possible amount of blood, and blood, inside and out on the animal. So that's key. Make sure things are sharp and that they don't go dull by the time they go through the hide or rib. And then it comes down to kind of size. A single slice, 2 blade won't give you, well, it might give you a great blood trail, but it might give you a poor blood trail. That single slice can sometimes close up. So, adding a crosscut with a bleeder or a 3 blade will typically give you a better holes for blood to come out than just a straight 2 blade. And then the size, what I would say is like our wide cut, which is 1 3/8 main blade, 3/4 inch bleeder. So 2 1/8 inch total cut. That thing, with it being sharp and slicing all the way through, I don't show a lot of my blood trails because it's just, there can be just a ton of blood with that big of cut and slicing all the way through. I feel like you're going to get a better blood trail than that than a mechanical, because those edges aren't sharp and they're pushing a lot of tissue as you're going through. And also they often don't get a full penetration. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'm a bit biased against mechanicals, as you can tell, but
yeah.
the fixed blade is going to be kind of size, sharpness. And then the other thing is this rotation of the single bevel. In order, I'd kind of say a 2 blade with no bleeders would be can kind of give you potentially the least blood trail, and then a two blade single bevel give you some rotation, so it opens it up a bit more. But then either a double bevel with bleeders would probably be next, because I think that cross cut helps you more than just the rotation when it's a small amount of, well, that can be debated, but I think a double bevel with bleeders does a great job too. And then the double bevel or the single bevel with single bevel bleeders, where you get that rotation, is probably the most trauma for that, size of a head, I would say.
Yep.
Anyway, those are all factors that kind of affect how much bleeding, how quick it kills, how much blood you get on the ground.
Yeah, and then all this comes down to, people are choosing what heads work for them, kind of determining what your priorities are and what you kind of want, and it can help, although it's such a minor difference probably between the two from the single to double bevel and everything that we discussed, but at least it can help you make that decision instead of thinking about it for too long.
Yeah, a lot of it's confidence. I'll tell even my friends or other people I know in the industry, they'll ask me, should I shoot single bevel or double bevel? And I just explain to them the differences between them. They both were great. I've been alternating them on elk recently. And man, I can't say the performance, it lacks on either one of them at all. They're both doing great. And a lot of it's confidence. Like, all right, you've told you the story, told you how they perform for me. Which one are you more excited about? Or which one give you more confidence? Just pick that and go with it.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, and for anyone that doesn't know and hasn't listened to the other podcast with Bill, he shot a lot of elk and deer in the past, so he's got a lot of experience with these. That's for sure.
Well, I think I love hunting, of course, so that's why I want to do it anyways. But I also feel like I want to keep improving products. I want to keep observing what happens. I want to keep improving my level of bow hunting, and at this point, I want to bring others along too, help everybody be more successful. But if you're not out in the field using the products, testing them often in all the conditions, I don't know how you can make them better. So it's it's a rough job, but somebody's got to do it. So
yeah. Hey, is all right. So here's one last question. Then I'm gonna let you go. Will Iron Will ever come out with a bulletproof expandable broadhead?
Man, I don't know if I can never say never. I do get that question a ton. And I did mechanism designs for other companies for 25 years. I feel like I could make a better one, but all that being said is, man, I don't want to make something that I don't think is better than what we currently have. And at one time it was the reason I didn't want to go to single bevels, because I felt like our double bevel's better. But I built it, tested it, saw it had performed great. It had some good advantages, so I came out with it. My current thinking is no, I'm not currently planning to. I know a lot of people want it, but man, shoot our wide heads if you want to shoot them mechanical, or a standard. If you're having trouble with flight, call our customer service, or email us. We can help you to be able to get them to fly well long range. I feel like there's less failure modes. Even a mechanical that I designed and put years into, it's going to have more failure modes than our fixed heads. And is it worth taking those? There's trade-offs and everything, but do you really want to have something that can give you a higher chance of failure? For what reasons? And right now I don't see enough good reasons to make one and push people towards that versus what we offer.
Yep. Nope. Good answer. But all right. Well, Bill, I appreciate you coming on and talking with me again here. It's always good. It seems like just about once a year we end up getting together and doing a podcast, and it was nice getting to see you here recently. I'm excited to hear how your hunts go this fall. Sounds like you got a full plate, that's for sure.
I do, yeah. I've got bear, 2 elk, mule deer, 4 whitetails in the plans right now. So it'll should be good. What do you have planned here, Beau?
So I have the Montana elk hunt. So is this goes out, I'll probably be driving out there here in a couple weeks. Basically, so I'm leaving soon for that, and I have slated 21 days to be out there.
Nice.
And so I also have a combo. So I have a mule deer / whitetail tag there too. So if I get lucky and tag out early on elk, I'm gonna try to hunt some deer, maybe even try to hunt some whitetails there. Although I haven't killed a mule deer yet, but I'm a whitetail guy at heart, so might try to do that a little bit. And then I have Pennsylvania and West Virginia whitetail tags I'll be focusing on pretty heavily, and then possibly going back out to Montana in November to hunt the rut with that general combo tag with the mule deer and whitetail there. So my brother lives out there, so it would make it thought about spending Thanksgiving out there and doing a little bit of hunting there too. But that's what I have on the plate now, and kind of see as the season goes, whether like last year I didn't have New York in the plans, but I just went and bought an over-the-counter tag and went there, or Ohio. But I really want to focus in on those states that I have tags in and spend enough time in there to hopefully do all right. So that's my plans.
Great. Well, I look forward to talking later and hear how the season went.
Yeah, no, definitely. Likewise. So Bill, ironwilloutfitters.com is a website. Ironwill Outfitters on anything on social media. Is there anywhere else that people can follow along and check out the products and some of the informational videos and stuff that you guys put out?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Our website, as you said, ironwilloutfitters.com, and that's our Instagram, Facebook as well. We have a YouTube channel where we're posting some how-to videos, and we post more and more stuff on there, so you can check out our YouTube channel as well, and that's Ironwill Outfitters.
Yeah, the YouTube channel is very helpful. I will say to you, just feedback. It's been really helpful. As just even when I never hot melted in inserts and heads before, and how to do that, and using the tool and going in there and roughing things up and cleaning it and making sure you put everything together right really helps the people sharpening the blades, taking care of the tool blade and like all that different stuff. It's a lot of good information there. So if anybody has any of the products or interested, it's you'll learn a lot on the channel.
Yeah, well, thanks, Beau. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, as always, Bill, it's good talking to you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.